Hello and welcome to the Scouting Board, episode 9. It's Tuesday, January 12th. Beautiful day today. Today we're going to be looking at Jake Haener. Jake Haener, if you're a college football fan, you would have heard of him by now, most likely. But if you're not so much, you probably haven't. He's projected right now to go in the 6th and the 7th round, around there, or even an undrafted free agent. But his college career has been very good so far. And Haener, the only reason why Haener really has not gone so high up for such a good college career, having 3 years of experience, starting pretty much, is because Haener plays at Fresno State. That's probably why you haven't heard of him at all. And I wanted to shine a little light on him here in the episode 3 of season 3. And I think Haener can be a really good quarterback in this draft after what I've looked at. And I think a lot of scouts are kind of, at least early in the cycle, aren't really looking at him the way that they should, which is a quarterback that can be effective in the league, can do some stuff in the NFL. And I'm not just saying that because, a lot of people look at college quarterbacks that have a ton of success, especially at schools that aren't in Power 5, like Fresno State. And they see all these stats and they're like, okay, this guy's just amazing. He's going to be good in the NFL. That's not how it works. You have to have an NFL skill set. The NFL has certain skill sets that you need to translate over that make you good in the NFL. College ball and NFL, they're both football, but they're completely different games, completely different schemes, completely different, just ways to play. So I believe that Haener can translate over to the NFL. Scouts so far haven't really seen that. From what I've looked at, though, he does look pretty good. So we're going to look at that today and evaluate him just like we did Anthony Richardson in the last episode and all that. So if this is your first episode watching, you want to see how this works out, here's the deal. We look at Haener. We look at also Haener, a quarterback. If I haven't already said that yet, he's a quarterback. We look at the player. We look at his pros. We look at his cons. We then compare him to what he's going to be like, his ceiling and his floor of his NFL career. And then we're going to grade him overall on where he's going to be, what type of draft prospect Haener is going to be. So let's get just right into the pros. So Jake Haener is a senior out of Fresno State. He's 6'1", 200, prototypical average type of quarterback size, not tall, not short. He looks kind of short on the field. I'm wondering if his 6'1" measurement is kind of exaggerated a little bit. Lots of pro sports teams do that. To me, he looks more like a 6 foot 5'11". It looks a little bit on the smaller side, but Haener is listed at 6'1", so give or take, that's what he is. He's 24 years old. He's a little bit older. Not the oldest quarterback coming into this class. That would be, I believe, Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker, also another good prospect that we're going to get into. Maybe in the next episode. There might be an episode in between that. I'm going to record Hooker after, so we'll see what happens there. But Haener, 24, Hooker 25. So Haener on the older side. Another thing that's affecting his draft stock a lot there is that he's on the older side of things, and he went to a non-Power 5 school. So let's look at the pros. So first of all, we're going to go off his 40 time. His recorded 40 time, obviously we haven't had the combine yet, but his recorded 40 time right now is 4.82. Now that is a average quarterback score. Mahomes, I believe, had a 4.76 around there, a low 4.7, something like that. Mahomes is still a pretty mobile quarterback. You see that in his play. Mac Jones, though, for instance, had a 4.8. So quarterbacks can be mobile with a 4.8. They can be mobile with a 4.7. They can be not mobile with a 4.8 and a 4.7. 40 times are very, very, they're just very tough to kind of evaluate. You really got to look at on tape how they move. And Haener's not really the most mobile quarterback ever. He can run a read option. He's run a college offense at Fresno State. So he's been able to run the ball a little bit around, but more of the time he is a pocket passer. But he does have the option to run, which a 4.82 does exemplify. So that's always a positive in today's NFL, especially for a smaller guy that's only 200 pounds at 6'1". You're going to want him to have some mobility to extend plays, kind of have that improviser trait that you want in today's NFL, and not just be a prototypical pocket guy like some of the guys coming out in this class are, and some of the guys in the NFL are right now that, you know, don't really have a ton of mobility. I mean, Mac Jones can run a little bit, but he's not going to extend plays. I think Haener can. He's a little bit smaller, and I think that gives him, even with pretty much the same speed or maybe even a little bit of a slower speed, he can still kind of get around that and extend a little bit of plays. So I think that's something that's valuable for him. Haener's a precision passer. Precision passer. If we go into Haener's stats real quick, just to give you an overview here, Haener originally was at the University of Washington, then he transferred to Fresno State. So in 2020 was his first year where he really played at Fresno State. He had a 64.7% completion percentage, 2,000 yards, 14 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Pretty decent. Touchdown to interception ratio isn't amazing, especially for Fresno State, but a 64.7% completion percentage in college is pretty good. Then in 2021, his junior year, he goes up to 67.1% in completion percentage, a 2-point jump for him on increased volume. He had 490 pass attempts in his junior season compared to 232 pass attempts in his sophomore year. So volume went up, completion percentage went up. Great signs. Again, 4,000 yards that season too. So, crazy volume, good completion percentage. Even for a non-Power 5 school, obviously you got to factor that in. He's not playing against the greatest competition ever, but there are games in there that we'll get into a little bit later that are against very good Power 5 teams that he plays well in. So, again, when evaluating non-Power 5 guys, if they don't have the physical traits that jump off the page, you want to look at how they do against guys that are probably going to be in the league and are going to be very good. Where do you find those players most of the time, or a multitude of those players on a defense? If you're evaluating offensive player, you're going to find them on teams in the Pac-12, teams in the ACC. You're going to find them in teams in the SEC, especially the Big Ten. Power 5 schools, Big 12, obviously. You're going to find those players in Power 5 schools. So if you have a mid-major program player you're evaluating, you want to see how they play against those programs. If they play bad, then you got to look into that a little bit and see if they played bad because of their surrounding cast or they played bad because of themselves. If they played bad because of themselves against a Power 5 school, well, they're probably not going to be good in the NFL because they're playing against those guys every single down. So you really got to look into that generally. And then in 2022, his volume went down by 140 passes. He only had 350 pass attempts. But despite that drop, you got to, include that drop. He had a 5-point increase in his completion percentage, a 72% completion percentage in college, which is just perfect. Perfect. He's making good decisions. And that's a guy that's not going to put the ball in harm's way many times. Also, I should mention in 2021, his junior season, he had 33 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. So huge volume and a really good touchdown to interception ratio. In 2022, the one that I just said where he jumped 5 points in his completion percentage, he then had 2,900 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. So a really good touchdown to interception ratio right there. His overall career is a 68.2% completion percentage, 68 touchdowns to 18 interceptions in 3 years starting. With some games missed in there, obviously, the attempts went down, and you can kind of see that. But through it all, I mean, Haener, every single game that he's gone into, really hasn't put the ball in harm's way very much. And, with a team like that, you're going to have tight coverage all over the place. So he's making the right decisions for Fresno State. while he's in those games. And he's just super calm in the pocket. If you watch any film on Haener, he's going to stand there and he's really trusting his line. And when his line breaks down, he, under pressure, he's making the right decisions. He fits the ball into really tight holes, like all over the place. And like I've said a million times when I'm evaluating quarterbacks, any episode that I've ever had on a quarterback, the one thing that I look for the most is that if the quarterback can put the ball into tight spaces against really tough competition, really tough coverage, if he can put it in that exact spot, the tiniest of spots, that's how you know you have a quarterback that, you know, is going to be really good. If and he's making his reads, obviously. If he's making his reads correctly and then he can fit the ball into the tightest of spaces in the clutches of times, you're going to have a good quarterback. That's what made Joe Burrow such a good prospect. Not just because he had all these mind-blowing numbers, right? And I mean, that certainly helped a lot against SEC opponents. He had mind-boggling numbers. That was great. But the one thing that stood out to me for Joe Burrow the most was that Burrow, with these great wide receivers, with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, he didn't really make Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase work for the ball that much. It was mostly Burrow putting the ball where the corner couldn't get it and only his wide receiver can go get it. You know, the tightest spaces, doesn't have to make him jump that much. It's just kind of a little bit in front, leading him a little bit so that the ball is right in his wide receiver's hands, and the corner, you know, inches away, can't get it. When you can dial in your accuracy that much, that's a good quarterback. That's an elite quarterback, and that's a quarterback that's going to get you really far. Jake Haener has that trait. Now, he doesn't have that trait like, for instance, in this draft class, I'll compare him to some guys. CJ Stroud, right? He's not CJ Stroud. Jake Haener is not CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud's probably, spoiler alert for next few quarterback evaluations, but I've looked at pretty much all of the top quarterbacks in this draft class, and I've filled out all my scouting stuff for them. CJ Stroud is my number one pick in this draft. Last year it was Sauce Gardner. I went defensive. This year it is CJ Stroud. Now the Bears have that pick, so you know we'll see what happens there. But it's CJ Stroud for this one, just because I mean, prototypical, can be a scrambler, 6'3", great traits, can throw the ball, and has the Burrow factor where he just fits it in wherever. And like he has Marvin Harrison and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and they are incredible wide receivers, and yet he finds a way to not have them work for the ball. Like their job is so easy, and I think that's why Marvin Harrison Jr. is like thinking of just transferring to USC right now, because he's losing Stroud, and he doesn't want to really, he doesn't want to have to work his ass off for the ball all the time with whoever's coming in for Ohio State. So he's going to play with Caleb Williams, who has that factor as well. You know, has just a great ball with great physical traits. Haener doesn't have the great physical traits, but he has the factor. So, you know, it's something that can be really good for him. And I think something that can really, really affect the game. And that's why I say, you know, I've only been on one point here. I've been kind of rambling, just explaining stuff. But precision passer, he's a precision passer. I mean, he can fit it into any spot you want it. And he's going to stand in the pocket, and he's not going to be really affected by a pass rush. And that's something you're going to have in the NFL a lot. You're going to have a lot of pressure. And Haener really, he doesn't panic. He doesn't make bad decisions with the ball. He stays in there, stands tall, and even for a guy who's 6'1", can just really, really rip it and get it done. Haener's also a great passer in the middle, outside, deep, and intermediate of the field. All areas. He doesn't have one spot where he's super, super, super good. He's very good at just managing the ball and getting downfield. Something like Tom Brady, you know, one of the great players at just inching your way downfield, you know, 5 yards there, 5 yards there, 5 yards there, will hit a 40 out of nowhere, right? Jake Haener has that same type of thing. And with an NFL quarterback, especially looking at college film, when you can already have that kind of built in, that's great. Because, like I said in the last episode with Anthony Richardson, Richardson's strong point is his long ball. and he struggles a lot going across the middle, and he struggles a lot just kind of inching up, which is what you want with a quarterback because drives are just going to stall out if you can only go deep, really. And the short stuff should be the routine stuff, the easiest stuff, and Richardson struggles a lot with it. But Haener has it. Haener has it there. He has really, really good intermediate stuff. Can go in the middle, can hit seams, can hit flat. He can hit slants. He can hit goes. He can hit pretty much anything you throw at him. He can hit the sideline. He can hit across the middle. He's very pinpoint, very, very pinpoint in all of his throws. One of the throws, I'm not exactly sure. It will come up in the film at the end of this episode, but Haener has a really good throw. Oh, it was against UCLA in 2021. Against UCLA, he has two throws in the same part of the end zone that are just incredible. One of them's a comeback, and he puts it right on the sideline where only the wide receiver can get it, and it's an NFL too, because he gets 2 feet down. Like he puts it in perfect spot where an NFL player would totally go get it. So Haener definitely has that. And look at some of his UCLA film because that was a big high scoring game too against a Power 5 opponent. And Haener was just, he has some throws in there in that UCLA film that I think are his best throws that he's had in his whole entire career. Just like long balls and short throws and everything in between. He shows off everything that you need out of a quarterback. If he only played that UCLA game, like that's the only film that we saw, I think he'd be way, way higher than he is. But, you know, that's just, it's great tape on the UCLA game. He's really good when against good competition. That's another thing with Haener. So looking at his 2022 season, his best game here was against San Diego State in terms of yardage. They won 32-28. He was 34 for 45, 75.6% completion percentage. Again, he has very, very good accuracy. His completion percentages don't really dip below 60, which is in the NFL, you're going to want a 60 and up, generally a 65 and up. In college, you're generally going to want to see a 58% and up to kind of be in that conversation to get in the league and develop a little bit. But Haener already kind of has that accuracy. I want to go through his completion percentages for this past season just really quick. Cal Poly, easy opponent, 85.7% completion percentage on 42 attempts. Oregon State, 64.4% completion percentage on 45 attempts. USC, tough opponent. He only threw it 18 times, though. So, but 55.6% on 18 attempts. I think if you got more attempts in that game, that would have gone up. But, we can't really get that back. 45%. Excuse me. 45 attempts against San Diego State, 75.6% completion percentage. The 2 games after that, absolutely killed it. On 29 attempts, 82.8%, just astounding. 34 attempts against UNLV, 34, and he has an 82.4% completion percentage. Crazy. Against Nevada, he had 42 attempts. He has 69% completion percentage. Against Wyoming, he had 32 attempts for 65.6% completion percentage. Then in the Mountain West Championship game this past year, he had 27 attempts for a 63% completion percentage. And then in his bowl game against Washington State, one of the better opponents that he's played all year, they actually did really well against him. On 36 attempts, he had a 66.7% completion percentage. So just astounding numbers for this year in his completion percentage. And again, right, I said earlier in the episode, this season was his best completion percentage season by far. And I mean, he has 3 games where he's over 82% in completion percentage. 3 games. And the rest of the games are over 60, most of them over 65. And then one of them is 55.6, so 56, but he only had 18 attempts. It was the lowest attempted game of his season. So how you factor that one in, you can kind of think of that on your own. I don't really factor that USC game into him that much. And on 18 attempts, 10 for 18 isn't really that bad, especially against one of the best teams in college football this year in USC. So it doesn't really scare me too much. And again, his best games from this season, back on point, the good competition. Against Boise State in the championship game, 17 for 27, 184, 63% completion percentage, and 1 touchdown. No interceptions. Pretty good game. The best game I think he's probably had here is his game in terms of good competition. Against Washington State, they won 29-6 against Washington State, who had a pretty good season. Obviously, Pac-12, Power 5 team you're going to want to show out for in his last game of his career. 24 for 36, 280 yards, 66.7% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Great game by Jake Haener. Just great game. If we're going to talk overall, great games with no interceptions. The Nevada game, he was 29 for 42, 361 yards, 69% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Hawaii, he was 24 for 29, 327, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions on 82.8% completion percentage. Really impressive there. The San Diego State game I was mentioning before, it was his highest in yardage. He had 394, but he did throw 2 picks. He only had 2 games where he threw picks in this season. He threw 2 picks against San Diego State while still maintaining a 75.6% completion percentage. And he threw 1 pick against USC where he still had an even touchdown to interception ratio. And, only threw it 18 times. So not too bad. Oregon State, another team that was really good this year. He went 29 for 45, 360 for 64.4% completion percentage and 1 touchdown, and brought them within 3 points of, almost beating Oregon State. So pretty good for Haener in his 2022 season. Now, if you go into his 2021 season, his 33 touchdown season, arguably his best in terms of touchdowns and yardage. I like I'm a percentage guy. I like percentages evaluating cornerbacks, and I like percentages evaluating quarterbacks. I think that's the best way to evaluate a player. Obviously, competition factors into that, but if you can understand the value of competition in comparison to statistics and completion percentage, then you can put in a pretty good evaluation of a player. So in 2021, he had 30 attempts for 43 attempts, 30 completions, 298, a 70% completion percentage, and 1 touchdown against Oregon in a 7-point loss. Really good team. Came within a touchdown. Threw 70%, 0 interceptions against a pretty good Oregon team. So against pretty much all Pac-12 competition, if you haven't noticed, Jake Haener just kills it completely. No matter what year it was junior year here. He just killed it. So, really good stuff there. His UCLA game that I was talking about, amazing tape, crazy tape, was the highest yardage he's ever thrown for in a game. He actually won that game against UCLA. UCLA was ranked 13th at the time in the country. They won 40-37 against UCLA. He had 53 passing attempts, 39 completions, 455 yards on a 74% completion percentage. 74. Just mind-boggling. Crazy. 2 touchdowns, and he had 1 pick in there. But a 74% completion percentage on 53 attempts. 53 attempts, and you maintain a 74% completion percentage. If you're maintaining a 60% completion percentage on that game, that's still a crazy game. But he was 14 points above what I'd probably expect out of a college quarterback in that game. 74% against UCLA on 53 pass attempts. And this isn't dink and dunk all over the place type stuff. This is long throws, tight throws, as I'm saying. It's tight coverage against Power 5 teams. It's really, really tough. And to have your best games against those teams, it means that, first of all, Haener brings it against good competition. Like, he's ready for good competition and brings it harder than he does against average competition, which is a great sign. And two, he can play with that competition. And when you can play with that competition, you know, you can play with that. You can play in the NFL because, well, that's that class. Those players and those top teams are going to be the ones that you match up against every Sunday eventually. So it's just great signs that Haener can translate his game over, especially with the system he plays in. I mean, it's not too far off from pro style. I mean, it's not pro style, but the throws that he makes are very pro style, and he's a pocket type of guy. I mean, he has pocket abilities, pocket traits. He's not going to run around that much. He has stood in the pocket and he's made NFL type throws, and that's something that is really exciting about Jake Haener. If we go back into the stats a little bit more, Haener had his two bad games this year, I'd say. 50 attempts, so a big workload against Hawaii. He threw for 388, still a ton of yardage. 56% completion percentage, 3 touchdowns, but he had 4 interceptions. This was one of his worst games of his career. One of his worst. And then a little bit later in that season against Boise State, which he redeemed himself this past year, beating Boise State pretty good and having a good stat line. He had 22 completions on 38 attempts for 279 with a 58% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. But the rest of his games that season only limited to 1 interceptions in 2 other games. Obviously, that UCLA game and then a game against UNLV. The rest are spotless. And he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games where he's above 70% completion percentage. And a lot of those, I believe 3 are above 75. Or, excuse me, 4 of them are above 75% completion percentage. So, and again, those bad games aren't against good competition. They're against bad competition, which you can, measure that however you want. But personally, I don't like to see players having bad games against good teams and then good games against bad teams. You know, that's not the best thing ever. You want to have your good games against good teams. And then if you're going to have a bad game, throw it against a bad team. We can throw that one away. Maybe you're not, bringing it against the worst team. You kind of underestimate them, right? But you want your player to be able to shine bright in the brightest moments, the toughest times, the games where you need him the most. You want him to play the best. And Haener, having slip ups in his junior year, that he improved and eliminated in his senior year, which is good. You see improvement. Those games, you want to see him play good against good teams, and that's what he's done. So that's just some stuff that I like about Jake Haener. He's had a heavy workload, obviously, 50 attempts for a lot of those games. He's played 3 years. Pretty good. Consistent. He's had the consistency all of his senior year. He's had consistency all of his junior year, besides for 2 of those games where he didn't do too well, but he still kept them in the game, still had like 400 yards each time, and was overall just a pretty good quarterback there. Haener's also really confident in the pocket, as I said before, under pressure. If you watch any of his film, he'll get in there and he'll just stay pretty much. Under pressure in his face, he's going to throw it up, and he's going to make pinpoint good decisions with his throws. And he steps up well in the pocket without deterrence. He steps up into his throws, and even if the guy's coming at him, he's going to step up and not really be afraid, keep his eyes downfield, not going to kind of shell shock his way back into sack. He's going to step up and he's going to look right into a receiver, or he's going to look into his reads, and he's not really going to be focused on the defender too much, which could get him in trouble and injury trouble, but it's something that you want out of a quarterback. We're going to take a really quick break, and then I'm going to be back with the cons. And now to Jake Haener's cons. So obviously, you ask, Jake Haener, you've said all this good stuff about him. He has the Burrow factor. Like, he can fit the ball into any space. He can make all the throws on the field. Why is he a 6th and 7th rounder? Well, The fact is, Jake Haener has average arm strength. He can hit all the long throws. He can do really well there, but it's average. He has average arm strength. He doesn't have Anthony Richardson arm strength where he can boost it like 80 yards downfield. He's not going to do that. He doesn't have that size to do that. Haener can get it 50 yards downfield. He can get it 60 yards downfield to average NFL type of quarterback. You're not going to have really complaints like where he's going to get the ball. But if you have a Hail Mary from the 20-yard line, right, he's not going to get into the end zone. A lot of quarterbacks can't do that, but he just doesn't have the elite arm strength. It's kind of like a Drew Brees-esque type of arm strength. He's going to get the job done, but if you're down 7 points in the fourth quarter with 9 seconds and you're on the 20-yard line and you need to throw it into the end zone, Haener's not your guy. He's not going to get that done. You bring the backup quarterback with a huge ass arm. Haener's just not that type of guy. He's not a physical specimen. He's more of a mind focused type of quarterback, which usually I don't like Davis Mills, right? Even Tanner McKee out of this draft, the Stanford guys. They don't have a ton of really good physical traits. They're tall, but they don't have a ton of good physical traits. They're more of just like, okay, they make good decisions with the ball, generally, is how scouts look at it. I've hated both of those guys. Hated them. I think they're horrible quarterbacks coming out of the draft. And still now, I don't think Davis Mills is a good quarterback in the NFL. And I think most people can attest to that. Texans are going to draft the quarterback this year. But Haener is kind of the exception to that I've made. He just makes really good decisions with the ball, and I think he can do enough in the NFL even without superb arm strength that I think he can be a decent starter if he gets a shot. So that's my evaluation of him. I don't think it's that bad of a thing, but we'll see. Second con is he has bad competition. Flat out, he played in the Mountain West for 3 years. Like, even as I said earlier, he played really good against good competition. But those bad games against Hawaii and San Diego State and schools like that, they are tough to look past when evaluating prospect. And I've had trouble looking past those games because some of those some of those numbers and some of that film, just watching it, it's ugly. It's ugly, some of those throws, but the majority of the time he does get the job done, and against better competition he gets that job done. So scouting a quarterback that's non-power 5 is going to be a struggle every single time because of that. But here we are with Jake Haener, and I think the bad competition isn't going to be that bad. The third con: there's a possibility that Haener is just a product of his system and the coaching staff. This is a tough thing to look at, right? Washington State has produced a bunch of quarterbacks through their air raid with Mike Leach, rest in peace. And a lot of them haven't worked out. Most of them haven't worked out, besides for like Gardner Minshew, who has been a serviceable backup and can come in and play really well, which I think is a role that Jake Haener could have in the NFL, especially with how late he's going to be drafted. But when looking at those type of guys, you want to avoid being the Luke Falk or a guy like that is really just a product of the system and isn't all of that. I think Haener makes enough throws and can fit into any system and isn't a product of his wide receivers or a product of all that. Because if you're a product of your wide receivers, like, it's just like your Stetson Bennett, right? You're just throwing to an open wide receiver every time. You have a 60-yard throw, wow, 60-yard touchdown, but it was all your wide receiver because all he had to do was really just boost it like 20 yards and the wide receiver did the rest type of thing. Most of Haener's tape isn't that. It's tight throws into tight spaces on the sideline in the middle of the field that he gets the job done with. And that's kind of how you can tell he's not a product of his system. So I side on Haener being his own thing, being his own product, even with not amazing physical traits and not amazing size. I still think his mind and his reads and his throws are very good. It's not Zach Wilson. He's far better than Zach Wilson was coming out. in terms of smart decisions and reads. So that's what I think of that con. He's a smaller quarterback, as I said. He's listed at 6'1". I think he's more 6'5", 5'11", which can be a little bit of a turn. Obviously, you want a taller quarterback, but in today's NFL, we have quarterbacks that are very small, like Kyler Murray, that work out just fine. So, especially for a pocket quarterback, I should say too, because a lot of the smaller quarterbacks are more, mobile. Russell Wilson has worked out earlier in his career, obviously not too much this past season, but he, has mobility, of course, but effective pocket passer, I think. And I think Haener is kind of the same. Drew Brees wasn't the tallest guy ever, but he still was very effective in the pocket. Probably, until Tom Brady broke the record, was the most effective guy in the pocket of all time. So, you can still see pocket passers that are 6', 5'11", 6'1", performing well, as long as they can make the right reads, make the right throws, and are smart enough. And I think Haener has that ability. It looks like I don't love Haener's passing form the best. It looks like it takes a lot out of him to throw the ball. We had the same problem with Cam Newton. As a Patriots fan, I watched Cam Newton for that one season, and it looked like he was throwing a brick pretty much that whole time. Haener isn't as bad as that, but he looks like he puts a lot of his body into the throw, which I think can take a lot out of a quarterback, especially in the NFL, where you're putting a lot more force on the ball. Now, he has super good zip. That's a pro that I probably should have put in there that I should mention. He has really good zip on the ball, and a lot of his tight throws, a lot of his short throws, he gets the ball in there really quick, which is an NFL trait that you want. So that's very good for Jake Haener. But on a lot of his deep throws 60 yards downfield, 50 yards downfield, it looks like he's just taking his whole entire body and just shifting it forward, which, if you're going to make it down there, that's fine. But if you're going to take a bunch of exertion out of your body and you're not going to be able to make the effective reads or make really good throws 2-3 plays later, that's a concern and something that, you want a good passing form out of a quarterback. Hopefully they could develop that a little bit more, maybe fix them a little bit more, get them a little stronger. But that is something that does concern me and does kind of take me out of Haener being one of the top quarterbacks in this class. That is that is a legitimate concern for me that I actually am concerned with, and I think it should be listed as a major con for him. So his comparisons for me, I think his ceiling right now is what Drew Lock was supposed to be. I fell in love with Drew Lock when he came out of the draft class. And I think I mentioned that before on a second take before in one of those early episodes. When that was happening, I was really before the show, very in love with Drew Lock. Obviously, that hasn't worked out too well. I think Drew Lock can still be effective in the NFL, but hasn't worked out completely. I think Drew Lock and Haener are very similar. I liked Lock's throwing form a little bit more, but I think Haener's ceiling is what Drew Lock was supposed to be. An average starter in the NFL that can really sling it, can gun it, makes good decisions with the ball, and overall just has really with high volume, has really astounding numbers and good completion percentage numbers with a high volume. And I think that's what he can be at his ceiling. I think at his floor, he's going to be a really decent backup that can take a heavy workload. Someone like Case Keenum, who has stayed in the NFL for a very long time as a backup and has played super, super good. And I think that, as backup, and has stood in for some really good teams and has brought them very far. And I think you can see that in college with Haener playing really good against really good opponents like Oregon and UCLA and Washington State. I think you can see that he has that kind of X factor that I think Case Keenum had with like Minnesota, where he brought him to the NFC Championship. I think even at his floor, Haener is going to be a decent backup, a career backup that's going to stay in the league for a long time. Is going to be that second guy that is going to get called on sometimes and play a couple games and play really good. And for smaller guys like Keenum and a Lock, I think that is really effective. So I think taking a late round flyer on this guy, like a 6th round pick, I'd even draft him as high as the 4th round. I think right now Haener's probably a 3rd round talent in my eyes. I draft him probably around the mid 3rd round. I think he can be a starting quarterback in this league. He's going to need to work a little bit more, but he has traits. He has really good decision making. I just like to see him get a little bit stronger and fix his throwing form a little bit more, um, and not put as much weight into his throws that it looks like he's doing, because that concerns me a lot, and I think that's something that might need to be fixed just a little bit. So my overall grade for Jake Haener is going to be a B minus. I don't think he has the ultimate potential that a guy like Anthony Richardson does. Although I don't love Anthony Richardson, and I'm grading Jake Haener above Anthony Richardson because I think that his floor is much higher than Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson, I can see flaming out of the league very, very quick as a quarterback. For not having great completion percentages and not making great reads, just being kind of a physical monster. Haener's more of a, again, precision passer. And when you have that type of trait, that really doesn't go away. You're going to make the right decision if you have a good mind. So I think his floor is just way higher than Anthony Richardson. I think he's going to be in the league for a long time. So I'm going to value him around mid third round. He's going to be a B minus prospect for me. And that's my evaluation of Fresno State quarterback Jake Haener. You should really go to check out some of his highlights. In fact, while I'm at it, I'm just going to look at these really quick for you guys. So his first game against UConn, this is his 2021 highlights. Has a really nice corner play into the left corner. Come back. Here's a seam route, a little bit underthrown, but gets it right where his wide receiver needs it. And he had a really good game against UConn. I think I talked a little bit about this earlier in the episode, but really good game against UConn. Here was a slant, puts it right on him. The wide receiver does the rest here, but honestly, if I got stopped, still a really, really nice throw there. I'm going to skip over to the UCLA highlights really quick. Here at the 25, guns it right into the left corner of the end zone, 2 feet down for the wide receiver. This is in the fourth quarter with 3 minutes left. If you want to pinpoint the exact play, it was 30-26 at the time. Just guns it 25 yards. And also, if you look at his throwing form here, this is what I'm talking about. That's concerning. Right, he's not deterred from the pressure at all, but he throws his full body forward. His full body. It's like a ragdoll type of throw. And I mean, the ball is zipped out of hell into the right corner, front corner of the end zone. And it's beating out one defender who's diving pretty much for the ball, just barely gets by him, and then another defender that's behind the wide receiver that's pretty much right there. Put it exactly in the spot where the wide receiver can go get it. Great ball. And there was also another receiver right there. So just, I mean, insane throw by Haener. And he has another throw with 18 seconds left that's right into pretty much the same spot. It's caught in the 1 yard line, but it's like a type of comeback, I believe here. I'm going to look on the route. Yeah, it's just like a kind of a simple comeback type thing. And he puts that right in the same spot, takes the lead with 14 seconds against UCLA, and that's the win. There's not putting as much pressure into the throw. Kind of decent passing form, though, a little bit of a sidearm, but gets it right in the right spot. Not as tight coverage, but still, same spot, just guns it. And I mean, the tight throws are just there. I mean, they're just there in that UCLA film. I just fall in love with it every time. It's so good. But yeah, that's gonna be it for Jake Haener. Really good quarterback, I think. Has a lot of good traits. I'm excited to watch him in the league. So excited to see what he does in the combine. I think his combine is going to be really good, and he's going to rocket up draft boards a little bit. That's just my little prediction there. I think scouts are really undervaluing him right now, but once they see him with their eyes, I think he's going to get up there a lot. Even for a guy that's not really a ton of physical traits, I think that's still going to be showed off in the combine, especially when he meets with coaches. I think he's going to really, really kind of show off what he's got there. So that's going to be it. There's going to be another scouting board episode coming out soon. Hendon Hooker possibly, or another guy. We've already done 3 quarterback episodes in a row. Seems a little extreme, but there could be another one. Who knows? But yeah, guys, thank you so much for listening. You can follow me, follow the show on Instagram at Second Take Show. We post all the scouting board and Second Take stuff over there. You can also listen to us on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this. YouTube, Anchor, Spotify, any podcast platform. If you want to listen to it, just audio. That's all there. Second Take for all of those, and scouting board for audio. Follow me on Instagram, not Instagram. Follow me on Twitter at BillySRP. You can also follow our Twitter account at Sports Report Po 1. You also can look at our written stuff, which we haven't done too much lately, but we're looking at doing that a little bit more, especially after this week. I'll probably get into writing a few more articles. We've been kind of on a hiatus, focusing more on the podcast audio stuff, which we've been off for a while. So we're kind of going on and off, but we're trying to get all that stuff in tune. There should be another Second Take coming soon. Not sure the exact date on that yet, but there will be one soon. And yeah, thank you guys so much for listening, and peace out. See you in the next one.